Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Tavish, and I am going to be doing a book review on A.G. Riddle's new book, Antarctica Station. If you loved the Atlantis Gene trilogy, Pandemic, and his other books, you'll definitely want to stick around and see what I have to say about his newest book. It may not be what you're expecting. So, I have read almost all of A.G. Riddle's books, and I think there's one on a flight about an airplane. I can't remember which that one's called that I have not read. And I am a big fan of his style of writing, I guess I would say, in his genre scope that he's trying to cover with science fiction and fantasy elements, aliens, really diving deep into different science topics. And so, of course, I wanted to read his newest book. And there has been a theme, I'll say, over the past couple of books he's written that I haven't been too fond of his writing style or the turn in which he's now writing. So, Antarctica Station is about a anesthesiologist. We'll see if I can keep saying that without messing up the word, who is wrongly accused of stealing drugs from the hospital she works in, and then also being high while while there's operations going and she's doing her job. And so in that, she ends up getting a plea deal with a science company that she's never heard of before, who has a research facility in Antarctica. And she ends up taking that plea deal and going to Antarctica. Now, before she goes there, she is actually cornered basically by the FBI and other agencies, or another agency, saying they want her to spy on this science research facility and this company. And so she also accepts that as well. And so she goes into this research opportunity, which is all in her field of anesthesiology, which is a bit of a stretch for me to get there, thinking that someone who does anesthesiology is required in research, but it fits with the storyline. And she ends up going. And there she ends up discovering that maybe what she's researching on isn't actually what they are telling her it is, and maybe what's happening in the facility isn't actually what she thinks it as. Maybe they tell her it's just longevity and being able to kind of skip through time if they can, put people under and then keep them healthy until treatment and different things are ready for them in the future. And as she's trying to do her research and basically escape this facility, she ends up discovering that it's not at all what she thinks it is. For the pros and cons of this book, I'm going to start with the pros, which I actually find a con, but I think other people will find it as a pro. This book heavily focuses on the human experience and human relationships. And I'm not going to say A.G. Riddle doesn't do this in other books. He does. It just isn't so in-depth and the focal point of the plot as it is here. So I would say I think people who enjoy character-driven plot lines and really understanding like human experience and relationships and how to forgive and trust yourself, all of those kind of pieces, love someone, are really interwoven and like really, really big pieces of the plot. Now, for me, it was not something I wanted to read. I would say that the con of this book is that the plot line seemed really thin. There was no meat on the bone. There wasn't the complexity. There wasn't the science. There wasn't. And now the book does stay true to A.G. Riddle's usually end of the world type theme or plot point. And so it does stay true to that, but the complexity of it wasn't there. Now, after I finished reading this book, I ended up feeling like I was missing something because I I thought, like, this book just isn't like his other books. Why? I can't put my finger on it. Like, why is this book so different? It's well written, plot is cohesive, pacing is a bit off, but like the whole thing, I'm like, yeah, it's a good book in general. But if you know A.G. Riddle's style, and what he ends up doing is doing deep dive and researching all these different topics in science and trying to explain it to the reader so that they can get on board with these ideas and it can push the plot forward. That wasn't in this. And so I ended up rereading and listening to The Atlantis Gene and that trilogy to remind myself, what is his original writing style like and what type of plots does he write? And he writes highly complex plots with a lot of science, a lot of concepts that he's trying to teach the reader at the same time as pushing the plot forward so that you can get on board with, this is real. Like, I'm trying to show you how this science does take place and how this could be a thing. And I appreciate it. And he doesn't always nail it. And sometimes it's messy and there's plot holes, but there's a lot of complexity to what he's trying to convey. And I appreciate that he always is attempting that. This book doesn't have any of it. This book has none of it, actually. And so that was very, very disappointing. So I would end up saying that there's probably one group that I would highly recommend this book to, and then nobody else. And this group is someone who's been semi-interested in A.G. Riddle, but never read any of his books because they didn't want to dive too deeply into the sciences. They weren't really gung-ho on hearing about end of the world stuff or aliens. And they just wanted something that was a fun read, but isn't going to have them thinking, does this even make sense? What is really happening here? This plot is really complex. This book is for you. And this isn't to say it's not well written or it's not good. It is. I think it's a good way to dip your toe into what it's like, skimming the surface of what he's actually capable of writing. And this book would be for you, because for those of you who have read, like myself, his earlier works, it's nothing really like it. It's not as complex. It is not taking the science that we know he likes to research and dive deeply into and try and explain it to the reader. It's not there. So I read this book hoping that with each new chapter and kind of twist, that there would be a great turn and that we were going to meet some new something that was going to make this plot more complex, that was going to add elements of science that I didn't know about that would, teach me something. It wasn't there. So for those of you who have already read A.G. Riddle, loved his old stuff, I don't recommend this book. I think you'll just be disappointed. I think the focus of the characters was not something I actually wanted to dive into, and that ended up being the focal point. I want to say for the middle third of the book, maybe, it was between two characters and forgiveness and friendship, and it was honestly I don't want to say it was boring, because the plot was moving forward and I kept on thinking something was going to happen. It just was out of pacing. We don't need that much time to understand that they're rekindling their friendship, and that they're forgiving each other and that sort of thing. So I honestly can't say I recommend this book to anyone else. I don't think it was what I believe A.G. Riddle is capable of, and the complexity and the science and the research. I'm finding that his newer books are simpler, and I'm guessing they're supposed to appeal to a broader audience. I just don't like them. I want to learn something new and discover, some twisty plots that really have me thinking, and wondering, what did I read before? Because does this really make sense over space and time and all these different things? And it just wasn't here, and it just didn't land for me. But I do recommend his older books. I do think they are really good. So if you enjoy reviews, honest feedback on books, click subscribe. Love to have you join me here. And I want to thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.